welcome. Thank you for coming. And I really enjoyed your presentation on AI because, of course, they're related concepts. So the first thing I want to do is share a little bit about my background um, and, kind of how I've come to um, homeschooling. So I think similar to something that you had mentioned before, our family shifted to homeschooling during the pandemic. So we're in our fourth year of homeschooling. I have one son and he is 14. And a lot of my reasons for shifting into homeschooling was really kind of thinking about the kind of deficit-based approach that was happening with people talking about so slow learning and just didn't feel like the schools was an environment that I wanted my child to be in. Secondarily, there was also that piece about, cultural relevance. And I was really, interested in making sure that I could expose him to the kinds of tools and resources that I thought were really important, kind of focused in Black culture. And then the other thing too, with just the pandemic, freedom. You start recognizing all sorts of different arrangements were possible. And I didn't have to be kind of in that grind, waking up early, then, rushing home and all of that stuff. So specifically the type of homeschooling practice that we engage in is unschooling. So I really allow my son's interests to guide how we structure learning. So I'm looking for a lot of interdisciplinary tie-ins. And we do a couple of different things. So self-designed, as we kind of mentioned before with ChatGPT, I'll put a whole New York Times article in there and like ask an eighth grader questions based on their reading from this, right? And just kind of put that on my own worksheet and give it to him, off the shelf type stuff. We belong to a couple of different co-ops. So if we find a class that's really interesting, we will also do that. Some online classes. But the other big piece of our practice is in the metaverse. And that's what I'm going to be sharing with you a lot today. So as you can see on the screen, you see my avatar. You also see my husband and my son's avatar, but I also want you to go ahead and meet them. So here they are. If y'all could stand up and just kind of let them know you're in a place. Tice, if you can give us a dance move as well. Excellent. So the space that we're in right now, I'll talk to you a little bit, more about this particular space, but this is a platform that I enjoy using that I also use for my research as well. So right now I'm currently in a doctoral program, but I also have a background in technology, have worked in schools as a technology director. I've also been a principal at a school as well, but a lot of my work has been working with adults and children in using technology. So I'm very excited about the possibilities in the metaverse. And so today I'm going to be talking to you more about how we can use the metaverse in our practice. I included this in the presentation because from the vision board experience, just wanted you to see a little bit of that more, but hoping for a lot of travel. We definitely have the metaverse as part of what we'd like to see going forward. So I'll come back to that later, but that was from our visioning board activity before. So today what I'm going to do is break down the metaverse a little bit because it's a term that is thrown around and it's used to refer to a lot of different things. So I want you to be clear on what the metaverse is. I want you to think about what might be some of the benefits of the metaverse for your family and your homeschooling practice. And then I want to give you 7 tools to get started in the metaverse. And then we'll open it up for questions. So when we think about the metaverse, it's an evolving concept. So as many different people as you meet, you might get a slightly different definition of what the metaverse is. But the metaverse is really sort of 2D and 3D digital spaces where you can have a shared experience, right? And these spaces are really dynamic in that users can interact with the space. So I have a couple of examples here. So one is kind of like a 2D, kind of like the video games reminiscent from when we played games, right? It can be just a basic kind of 2D environment. It could be like 360 photography. So where we kind of take the physical world, we digitalize it, and then you examine that kind of physical space, right? Then it can be completely kind of computer generated in the idea that we have avatars and we build out buildings and objects within a space, right? So you'll hear people talking about the metaverse, and they're talking about these different kinds of spaces, right? But how do you access them, right? So we have this thing called the metaverse. And in order to access the metaverse, you could have a virtual headset or a mixed reality headset. And that's something that's going to go right on your head, kind of cover your eyes, and it's kind of going to direct your visual and audio kind of perception. There are, more apparatuses you can put on your body, but basically a headset is kind of what we're talking about now. You could access the metaverse through a computer, just kind of like I, showed a little while ago. You could also use a phone or a tablet. Okay. But when you get into the metaverse, you're going to have different kinds of experiences based on how you access it. Right. So we could have virtual reality, which is what we think about where you're fully immersed. So when you have the headset on, you basically are only taking in the virtual world, right? We can have augmented reality. That's where we overlay the digital world onto the physical world, right? So we have a lot of games like Pokemon or, but we're imposing something digital onto the physical environment, right? And then we have mixed reality, or as Apple likes to call it, spatial computing. But the whole idea that physical and virtual worlds are interacting, right? So this is where I might have a digital image overlaid over the physical world, but if I touch that digital image, it can actually read my hand. So it's like the physical world can interact with the digital world and cause a result, right? And what happens in terms of these virtual, augmented, and mixed reality experiences is that there are other technologies that are advancing to make those interactions possible in the metaverse. So you might have heard people talk about Web3 or blockchain or AI or big data. These are all of the technologies that are making these things happen in the metaverse. So the metaverse is something very specific, but it's bundled with a lot of different technologies that everyone is really excited about. Okay. And so what I want you to understand is that there's a lot of buzz. So the buzz is what people see and talk about. The metaverse, billions of dollars, everyone's going to be in the metaverse by this particular year, right? But there are these other benefits that we don't see. And so generally we talk about this as the iceberg effect. There are things that people see and talk about, but then there's other things that people don't see. And I want to talk to you about the opportunities that you may not be seeing or people may not be celebrating and practicing with the metaverse. So on the surface level, it's a lot of, I would say a lot of business opportunities. You can do marketing and branding inside the metaverse. You can create new products. You can buy virtual real estate. I have friends who bought virtual real estate, concerts in the metaverse, all of these types of things. What I want to do is focus our thinking more on, for our homeschool practice, what can we be doing in the metaverse? Because we've already kind of stepped out of the normal grain of things, or the mainstream of things, right? And this is a novel, exciting new technology, but how could we be using it as well? So what I found in my homeschooling practice, and what I'm going to be sort of bringing up some of the tools that we use, really deeply engaging in meaningful resources. So some of the creators that are creating tools in the metaverse now, a lot of Black and of color creators are really pursuing their imaginations and dreams and doing things that that because the textbook companies wouldn't allow them to do, they're doing it in the metaverse because they're having the opportunity to, have freedom, in the metaverse, right? So cultural representation there, empowerment as creators because it is a new platform, right? And community building and support. So I'm going to talk about a little bit. I'm in a co-op that is a metaverse-based homeschooling co-op. And students meet in the metaverse. We have a DAO, we have Bitcoin, we make decisions on blockchain, right? So exploring new ways of governing and interacting with people, okay? So I'm going to go over these seven tools, and then I'm going to take you for a little bit. So some of you who just joined us, right now, I want you to see that we're in a metaverse community. So even though I'm here in Zoom talking to you, in my metaverse community, I have my husband and my son. Can you all do your little dances again? Here, right? So I can have a whole different community also kind of tuning in and a part of my presentation in a virtual world that I create that communicates my values, my goals, right? Even with students, I've had them make virtual galleries of their work as well, right? Hold on, I see something in the chat. Let me, oh, okay. Okay. So Khadija saying she didn't know there was people. Yeah, my husband and my son are in different rooms, logged in as their avatars. And my husband's avatar is actually his own head. It's a little morphed, but just avatar development by itself is a whole conversation. When we start to pick skin shades, hair type, the way we express ourselves in the virtual world, it's all really rich for conversation study. So I'm going to keep on sharing here. So the first tool I want to talk to you about is immersive video. And this is as easy as you going onto YouTube. If you do a keyword search, VR 360 video, you will get immersive video and you can kind of add a keyword with the subject that you're trying to explore, right? So I have two examples. My husband is fanatical about Egypt and everything Egyptian, right? And we look at 360 videos exploring the pyramids, right? So, I mean, travel, of course, it would be ideal to travel, but if you can't travel, that's one of those things, travel without leaving your home, right? And it can be a precursor experience. The other thing is think about what happens inside your body. So this is a video that explores digestion, right? So, I mean, you can explain what happens in the esophagus, but in this video, you're actually going to be a piece of food traveling, right? So these really kind of difficult abstract, or even if you just have a student that is really sort of more sensory stimulated, these videos are multimodal. So between the sound and the audio, it really is an engaging experience. So I'm going to give you an example. And here's an example of the Smithsonian has an Afrofuturism exhibit, right? And our family went, but we took the 360 camera along and posted it. And now you can come with us to the Afrofuturism exhibit, right? And what's really unique about this is when you're watching a regular video, you have to follow the eye of the filmmaker, right? But in 360, maybe I'm just fixated with this particular piece of artwork, right? So you get to explore what you want to explore in these videos, right? So that has been really nice for so we use it as a teaching tool. So go ahead and film this, and then let's go back and revisit it and explore the things that we liked. And we all can be looking at different things at different times, right? Another video that I love to share, and this is one that I've used, especially when we're trying to teach acceleration. So I've gotten cyber sick on some of these roller coasters, right? But if you're trying to teach about acceleration and deceleration, and there's nothing like getting on a roller coaster, right? But now you don't have to go to the park, right? So this is a fun one that we do, and really brought that, after this, we built roller coasters, but you can feel some of the experience of what it feels to, when you're accelerating and decelerating, and then when you're working out those science problems, it makes a lot more sense. So these are free YouTube videos. All you're looking for is 360 in VR videos. And if you do have a cardboard headset. You could even use that to get the immersive feeling of it, but this still gives you the level to explore an environment as well as get a sensation of feeling. Right? The next tool I want to introduce you to is augmented books. So these are really fun, and especially for younger students, and also if you are kind of concerned about computer time, FaceTime with computer and all of that kind of stuff. These are augmented books where there are prompts or triggers within the book that then will, and you can use a phone or tablet. And when you put them in front of the trigger, what they do is generate then 3D objects, and they actually seem to be sort of holographic. So this is an augmented reality book about different professions, but you can see they have visual perception, grouping, coding, tracing, patterns, a number, and there are all sorts of augmented books based on different topics, even just character exploration. So all you do is put your phone in front of it, and then you're able to get these 3D images, and sometimes they talk back to you or explain how a process works. So this is a really fun addition to your practice. See a question? Yep, I can share it. I will give you my contact information, and I also will give you a link to the presentation. The next piece is thinking about apps. So there are many, many different apps, but I want to focus on some of the apps that I use more regularly in our practice. And this one is the Merge Cube. So this is what a merge cube looks like, but this is another augmented reality. And so I talked about these different types of experiences. So I really like these ones that sort of mix the physical and the digital world. But what you do with a merge cube is that you just, hold your phone or tablet in front of it, and then it creates models in 3D for you. And this was really great because, in science, we had to do a lot of diagramming, and it was getting a little boring. Or it was like some of the diagrams were really complex. Like one of the things we were doing was diagramming a flower, and it just like really wasn't making sense. So we used the merge cube to really explore the components. And also particularly with the merge, they keep expanding their library. So one of the new library collections that they have, and I kind of have a call out to it, is an African art collection. So now what they have is rare African artworks that now you can examine in 3D. And later on, I'll talk about the Smithsonian also has a digitizing initiative. So it has at least, I think, it might be somewhere now in the thousands because they have such a large collection, but they do offer 3D models of many of the objects. So we'll talk about that as well. So this is another great kind of opportunity for an augmented experience. Another huge piece is gaming. So, your kids might already be in Roblox or a number of other platforms, and you may think about it as only gaming. But I'll particularly call out Roblox. There are some challenges kind of in some aspects of the gaming platform. But what I really want to highlight is that we use this a lot for career pathway exploration. So you see my son's avatar there, Chip Whisker. And this is a screenshot of him being a junior barista. So I remember one day, really busy day, my son telling me we had to get home by a certain time. And I was like, why? And he's like, because I have an interview. And I was like, for where? He was like, to be a junior barista at this coffee shop. And I was like, are you serious? And he was like, I'm not joking. And literally he had an interview. Since then, he's been a pilot. He got fired from that job. But this was the interesting thing. So he's going through the process. He's learning. Right now, he's building a house, and he told me he needs about $28,000 more. Right. So the gaming is not so imaginary. It is bounded and constrained by real world challenges, and they are working through that. So he's like, I don't get my next subscription of Robux till next month, and I need 28,000 now to put a second level on my house. I'm like, so how are you going to solve that? He's like, I think I need to go to work. So, oh, okay. He's like, yeah, I'm looking for some other jobs that will actively support me because this job isn't enough. right? So it's very, very interesting that process of allowing him to play, but the communication is key that we're talking about these experiences. I also have access to these platforms as well. So I'm going in to these platforms and asking questions and exploring how they work as well. But gaming environments, using games to mimic real world situations, but also the creative potential. So Roblox is one of these platforms in which students can also create. So they're kind of starting to understand how to design the virtual world. And it's not just children in these virtual worlds. So Rihanna launched her makeup brand in the virtual world, right? A lot of other companies are launching their products also in the virtual world. So these also lead to career development as well. I'm gonna move on to the next piece, and this gets more into that creative background. So now you're in the virtual worlds and you're more of a consumer, but now we switch to this ability for you to create in the virtual world, right? So two areas, Tinkercad is a great product for students, free product for students to be able to create these assets that you see in the virtual world. So a house or a cup or a table, they learn how to design this using tutorials in Tinkercad, and then those objects can be exported. So I'm going to take you out for a second here. We're going to run to the gallery really quick because I want you to understand how this surfaces in our work. So my son is super into baking, right? And so he starts to model his food. So his baking stuff, macaroons, right? He made a cake or a pie, but he modeled it in Tinkercad. Okay. Uh, for our dinner, I was like, can you recreate that? So then he's created the turkey and the condiments and all of that. Right here is a project where we created our molds in Tinkercad of different Ghanaian Adinkra symbols, 3D printed them, and then made soap molds. Right? So it's really showing that production pipeline, like how do you come up with an idea and then how do we actually produce that in the real world? How do you take the digital image and then bring it to to the physical world, what that process is like, okay? So I'm gonna now dodge, gonna run back into the auditorium. All right. The Smithsonian, and I told you my family is from the Caribbean, so love these things, the John Canoe headdress, right? So they have all of their objects digitized. This is the amazing thing. You can download them and bring them into your own virtual environment, right? And so we've done virtual storytelling or historical storytelling through objects. So evaluating the objects, how they were designed, what's the symbolism, how does that connect, and making a diagram of that, right? So these are just all with these tools that are just available to you. Um, Another one going larger into this world, kind of this moves it just from the objects to world building is co-spaces. So co-spaces is where students can build their own sort of little mini virtual worlds. And these are worlds that you can interact with, but they're not kind of like the world that I'm moving in now. And what students do is they learn how to code the interactions in the virtual world. So for example, when I'm talking about sort of how I would apply this, um, and I thought that this was really great because, not another solar system project, right? Just not another one. We've all done it, though the number of planets have changed. Sorry. Right? I said, okay, kind of rite of passage, you need to do the solar system project. But the difference is this one is done where he had to code the rotation of the planets and kind of position them correctly, right? And then he has, hi, I'm Tice. I'm going to take you through the solar system thing. And I said, well, let's make it a little bit more, interactive. And the piece here said if you click on them, he had to attach a fact to each of the planets, right? So this made that kind of simple project. We did one physically, but it was like we don't have the right colors and we don't, I broke this planet, but doing it digitally really allowed us, besides the subscription, you know, like this became a project that he could iterate on, add more facts to, but became really exciting because he really started to understand the relationship and the distance, and then, trying to code them in order. So it just became a really, exciting project. Another thing that we've done, when we talked about avatars as well, is that in terms of doing history. And I was like, you be the reporter. And he was like, but I'm not a reporter. And I was like, well, but you could be. So he took his avatar, came up with, I was like, it needs to be under a minute. Right. And so just using the avatar here to create his own news story. And so we created the background, and then we went through kind of, he was like, it really takes a lot to take information and condense it and read it in a coherent, way. But I also said, but you're taking on the persona of a newscaster, right? So this was an opportunity for us to sort of extend his identity, but do a sort of innovating activity. And this is simply done. Like, this is actually not very complex. This is Zoom, take an avatar in Zoom and put a background and read it and edit the video, right? So it's just kind of using the idea of being sort of in a virtual world or a different environment. So, and I was going to wait to come out to the gallery, but I just want to kind of show you some of these things in real time. Right? So that's co-spaces. Then the last space, and this is what I'm really excited about, is that we talk about the importance of space. So there are a lot of these different virtual platforms that are social platforms that allow you to create your own environment, but then invite people, right? So two of them, Spatial, which is the one that we're in now, allows you to create, you can design your background or your environment. You can also bring people, bring in pre-designed spaces into this. The co-op that we belong to, the Genius School, they use the GatherTown platform. So what happens is 3 days a week, students meet in the GatherTown, and they've designed a layout for their virtual campus. And so whether they're having cooking club or art club, or whether in their gaming club, they meet there. As parents, we also meet there as well. So what we've designed is this online environment where we can share information, but also where we can meet. So, I mean, literally someone would just, ping me and say, hey, I'm in GatherTown. You want to come in and hang out, right? The same thing I do in Spatial. I put my, information, some of my dissertation work, certain things that I'm doing, and I invite people and have meetings and conversations there. So kind of right now, for those of you who must have joined, this is one of the particular virtual spaces, right? And so when we come out to this lounge area, right, next month, I'll be in a full conference event. So I've been in these spaces with 400 or 500 people, right? But look down this hall. We have a gallery down there. We have a lounge here. We have another gallery. If I run through this gallery to the edge of the balcony, right? So these are all kind of nooks and spaces that you can create. You can use them to display work or just for exploration of ideas. But coming out here and having a conversation with someone, out here, the idea that, I have one colleague that actually has created a virtual space support group for women going through menopause. Like, there are so many Black creators, metaverse spaces. Here is an example of my son. So he's baking, right? But he's on inside the GatherTown with his other friends talking about the recipe, right? And he's actually baking something. That's why I put the pictures on there, because it's not just he's in there and they're talking and nothing gets produced. He's there. They go through the recipe together, and then they post, what they've made at the end. So, I mean, our family has definitely benefited from, you can see, apple pie, cupcakes, quiches, right? The list goes on. So these can be dynamic spaces. So even though you don't have a physical space, this is sort of this hybrid space that not only do you design or have a location to go to, you also can design it with the themes that you want in mind, right? With the decorum. So definitely we've had Afrofuturism type spaces, but also putting our own content up there as well. Okay. So those are the 7 major tools that I wanted to share with everyone. And we have a little bit of time, but I can interweave this part about safety in the metaverse. So there are a lot of parental controls. There's nothing that is designed that doesn't have parental controls of the things that I showed you. So you need to be aware and use those parental codes. The other thing is that when students are in the metaverse, you can also screencast. So that means that you can project what they're seeing onto another device. So if I have concerns, like I want to go to this new metaverse space, or actually tonight my son is asking me to attend a Doja Cat concert. And I'm like, I don't know about that, right? But the whole idea is that I have a second headset so I can accompany him. And sometimes we do go into the metaverse together. I remember one student was like, another kid was like really he was like, "Is that your mom?" And he was like, "Yep." And he was like, "Well, okay, I'll teach her how to play too." Like, wasn't fazed by it, but I'm very much in those worlds and monitoring what is going on. Discussion about what is going on. So I like that my son comes and tells me like, oh, there was someone in the game and they were acting really rough. And I put up my protective shield because I just didn't know what they were doing, right? So there's safety controls in there, but I talk a lot about the experiences that we're having in the metaverse, and also setting time limits. So, certain days like, no, there's no, this is a metaverse free day, right? So just to control the amount of time that he is spending in there. Also with age considerations, so the headset use is not recommended for students who are younger than 13. So a lot of the examples that I showed you with the WebXR, accessing it through a computer, or the augmented reality, where you have a mix of digital with the physical worlds, are options you can explore before going fully into the headset. Okay, so that is what I have. And so now I want to open it up for you. I'm going to join the family who I think is still here in I'm also going to put up my contact information as well. And I'll go back into that room. And if you have questions or want to go back to explore any of the resources, we can do that as well. But thank you. And I'll start to check. Great. So a couple of questions. Okay, let me scroll back up to the top. So yep, I will definitely share this. If you want to drop your email into the chat, you can do that as well. Some of it is I just don't post this out just because it has links to my virtual worlds. And so that means anyone could come into your virtual world because it's an open link. So I haven't kind of shared it to you, but I'm happy to share these resources with you. So the Doja Cat concert, there are many concerts. There are NBA, sports games. There's a lot of things that are live streamed in the metaverse, and with MetaQuest, they are free events that you can attend. So actually for Christmas.
Can I ask Tracie? It's a
Sure.
lot of folks are dropping email addresses in the chat. Can I just ask them to shoot you an email at
Oh,
your
okay.
email address that's here, because so you'll have time to get all of these requests in one place instead
Sure.
of having to scroll through the chat. So if you all can just shoot Tracie an email, here's her email address, and she'll just reply there. But you said it's an open link. Is it a way to change that, to close the link so it's not an open link and people can't come into your world?
Um, at this point with this particular platform, the way I have it set up, no. So I can actually ask someone to leave, so I can, block them from coming in. But this particular world is kind of open. So the idea, and I said, if we have some time, actually, I'm going to copy this here. I'm gonna drop the link So if you're interested in coming into the world, you can click on this. You don't have to, it will ask you to choose an avatar. Since you don't have an account in this world, it'll say just choose an avatar. And then it would allow you to come in. So if you're interested just to come in and just explore an environment. So I saw someone just popped in or is on their way in, just to feel how one of these experiences are. So it's particularly an environment that isn't gaming, necessarily gaming based. Hello, right? And you see the potential even for just events. And the idea really, when we talk about the concept of future of work, there are a lot of companies and organizations that are starting to do onboarding and training in the metaverse. So it's kind of just like the earlier you develop fluency and comfort in this environment, right? The easier it will be. I remember starting a new position and the company used Discord as their communication system. And my son heard the ding of Discord and he's like, Mom, are you in Discord? And I was like, yeah, but for the first time. And he was like, let me show you how to use it. And I was like, he knew how to use this communication system better than I did and trained me on it for a new position. Right. And I was like, whoa, this is different. But I also enjoyed it as well. So, as I'm talking, just go ahead and, you can, and I'll put the screen on just so you can see sort of, how we're all here. But I was with another organization and we hosted a conference here. And so you realize how you could lay it out, just like this particular conference that we're doing right now. We could have different rooms. You could exit and go to those different rooms, have presenters in all of those different rooms, and then we come back to a central place. But we design our own content and what's going to be happening in those spaces very differently. So, okay, let me jump back to the chat and see other. Right. And I think the other thing in terms of like social platforms or communities, having students play together. So that was one thing that I wanted, I wanted my student, and you can see it's my education background that I can't get rid of, but I wanted my child to enjoy playing games, but I also wanted to have a kind of gaming community that I was familiar with. So that was one thing through our homeschooling DAO or community, having 10 or 15 gamers, students from like, children from 9 to about, I think, 15, all gaming together. So they, oh, hey, I'm about to go into Roblox or whatever. So not just necessarily, of course, my son tells me I know people from all around the world. He's very sensitive about what times I get on, or, I have a friend, sending him a message that they're about to get on. But I also wanted to make sure that he had a regular group, a gaming kind of community that I knew coming on. So I think like when you think about Roblox instead of Roblox and trying to sort of understand it yourself is also to be in community with other parents whose children are in there, as opposed to just, I didn't realize I could join a metaverse without an avatar. Yep, you can. So it could, because and this is one of the metaverses that is more of an open. So remember I told you about the link. So they try to reduce that friction to get people into the environment. So this is a very easy way. I've been at conferences and started the conference talking, and then by the end had everyone in the metaverse and us doing an activity in the metaverse, right? So this is one of those platforms that are geared toward social engagement, right? But there are other ones where, for the fuller experience, so you have some limitations on what you can do in this particular environment, but to experience like the full experience, then you'll have to create an avatar that is connected to that particular world. And you might have to have several avatars. So this is my avatar for many experiences, but I have another avatar when we go into MetaQuest or some of these other places. So what you can see here is that they've laid out some of the options here. So you could upload your whatever images or videos that you would like to upload as well. but you can see how this entire world is really connected, but you can customize this world as well. So I belong to a group that is Black creators in the metaverse. And so that's where you find architects of these kinds of spaces, but also educators who are designing educational types of metaverses as well. So I think next thing we're exploring language instruction in the metaverse. There's a platform called Immerse. So I haven't used it yet, so I'm not bringing that to you, but Immerse does language instruction in the metaverse. So you come in as an avatar and meet with other avatars and practice. I think they only do French, Spanish, French, I think French and Spanish for now. So, and we're studying some other languages. So, but we're going to look at that particular platform. And then there's another one that we're looking at that does chemistry. And I think we've learned through a lot of the chemistry experiments that we've done. And also me just trying to assemble all the materials for the chemistry experiments, really difficult. So I want him to also explore doing some of the virtual chemistry experience and also dissection. So certain things he's like, I don't want to cut up that animal in real life, right? So he can dissect them virtually, right? And still sort of understand the structure, but not have to go with, kind of, I remember in school we had to dissect cats. And I thought, I don't want to dissect a cat, but the idea that we could do it virtually. So there is that sort of benefit to have certain experiences that you don't want to have sort of physically, have them virtually. So, yeah. So if there are any more questions or feedback on how it feels to be or look at a different kind of virtual world. How does so the chat in the virtual world, so the chat and okay, this is great. Yeah, you should pull out the Oculus. The chat in in this particular virtual world works if you have an avatar that you have personally created. So that's how they're able to attach kind of your information and assets to you. So in this particular one, if you can see on my screen where I have the option, here's the control menu. So you can see that it is modulating my voice. If you come in as a guest, that they have no information, that's kind of one of the safety precautions. It doesn't allow you to speak. So you couldn't, like the Zoom bombing and that kind of stuff. So you could only speak if I allowed you to speak, or if they could attach your account with you so that if something happened, they could go back to your account and suspend your account. But in both of these, what you have right here at the bottom is you do have a chat feature, so you could type into the box at the bottom of the here, I'm trying to move my, so you can type in the chat feature here, but you can see here there, the number of screen sharing, but hosting tools that we have here. I have features in, for example, I can pull all the avatars to one particular room. So there are a lot of ways that you can manage the virtual environment. Yeah. So in the future, my plan is, and I'll reach out to you all with this, is that I'll be, and you can draw. One of the things I'll be doing is holding sort of monthly meetings, meetings, hangouts, gather, like time just to hang out with parents in the metaverse. As well as offering more opportunities to work with some of those tools like Tinkercad and CoSpaces with students. So if you are interested in designing those spaces, sometimes I also use it for storytelling. So if a student has written a book, right? I'm like, okay, create a virtual world around that book, or even code the interactions of the story, right? So we've done that. My son was not. I thought it would add excitement. I was like, let's code this colonial scene of the. He was just like, mm-mm. I'd rather come up with my own idea. It's like, okay, great. But these are ways that building interest, but also understanding, because after that, you have to bring in each character, you have to do the backtrap. And so some of those elements that we talk about in story writing come to life because you have to give it a digital persona in the virtual world. So I will definitely let you know about those opportunities um, to to connect if you're interested. And I think adding one or two new practices to what you're currently doing that touch upon the metaverse, virtual reality, augmented reality, or mixed reality. So I think we are at time.
I would like to thank Tracie for this fantastic, fantastic session. I learned so much. I'm the one that asked the question about, I didn't know that you could access all of this without a visor. And so I'm really looking at ways to apply this to the work that I do. So thank you so much for getting me started. This was fantastic. Everyone, she was gracious enough to give you her contact information. I really hope that you not only email her, but she also put her Calendly in there. Look at that. Now that's generous. So you can book a meeting. But I would definitely advise you to stay in touch with Tracie Yorke. I think this is just the beginning. And I don't think you realize that she's multilingual. The work that she's doing extends, I look at this type of work as being a new language. And so you really are a pioneer in terms of integrating all of this. And so I thank you, our Black rock star. Thank you. Give it up for Tracie Yorke. And you all have some time to take a bathroom break and a snack break before our next session. We'll see you at our next session. Thank you again, Tracie. And thank you everyone for attending. See you at the next session. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tracie.